Well, what's the papers talking about at the moment? I have to bring up the Daily Telegraph because it's one of the big boys, newspaper of record. But here's the headline: Queen fought off sex attacker. And apparently this is a story that the whole nation should be paying attention to. Of course, it's an allegation. It was something that happened when she was young. What has she done since to protect people against sex attackers or children being abused in the care homes? I've no idea. But the Telegraph put it as the main page. But of course, the key headline was this bit up here: docked destroyer that sums up our sinking Navy. And we'll get into what they're talking about. But first of all, let's have a look at what Defence HQ, the government's propaganda machine in UK, what it's talking about in relation to the world and the wars. Let's have a listen to Alistair.
Here in Kyiv on Ukrainian Independence Day with a very simple message. The UK stands with you in this fight and in securing a just and lasting peace. The Ukrainians have shown incredible strength in this conflict, a strength I have seen meeting some of the veterans of the war. Veterans, just like our own, act as an inspiration for not only the nation here, but serving personnel in the UK. We're working closely with the US, Ukraine and the coalition of willing partners to bring about peace, but Ukraine must be central to any negotiations. President Zelensky's leadership has been utterly amazing. I commend his courage and leadership as the country moves forward. In stark contrast, Russia has refused to agree to a full ceasefire. It's stepped up its tax on Ukrainian people since the US-led peace efforts have began. Indeed, just 6,200 one-way attack drones since July. A lasting peace is only possible if we continue to show strength and provide Ukraine with the support it needs to defend itself against continued and unabated Russian aggression. The UK is completely behind Ukraine, and with our allies, we will continue to support you until you tell us to stop. Slava Ukraini.
So as we have the issue with the flags around the country, we've got Defence HQ pumping out propaganda with this very emotive music. But this MP, is he naive or ignorant? I can't work it out. He may be both. Perhaps we should have Zelensky as Prime Minister to replace Starmer, because Zelensky, of course, is running a country with absolutely no corruption. People have happy, safe lives or not. And I just find it outrageous that MPs should think that we are so naive that we should fall into the trap of what they're talking about. Now, let's have a look at the Chief of Defence Staff, Radican, meeting up with Zelensky a few days ago.
Good to see you again. How are you? Yeah, very well. Thank you. Thank you for having us again. It's my relief. The new Chief of Defence.
We are very thankful to you, your country, and to your government and nation for such strengthening us from the very beginning of this war. And we're thankful to Kir, Prime Minister, for such deep involvement to this process, and with coalition of willings and with the support. So thank you so much.
Thank you. The Prime Minister sends his regards. I did a speech last week where I had to name check every Prime Minister for their support to me over my time, 4 years as Chief of Defence. But this is also about introducing Rich and to stress that our support to you and Ukraine is not personality dependent, it's nation dependent, and Rich will continue that level of support in exactly the same way that you would expect.
Thank you so much.
Well, Ben, I've got to say to you, I found that clip absolutely outrageous and offensive. Those two grinning senior officers using a very casual name, my friend Rich. When you look at Zelensky's face at one point, he is smirking. He's laughing at these two people, and well, he might, because we've got Radican, who can't even run the Royal Navy in UK, and we'll come on to that in a couple of minutes. And we've also got his Relief Air Chief Marshal Rich Knighton, not a pilot, not a navigator, no substance to the man in order to be head of the Royal Air Force. And yet these are the people dragging the UK into this awful war in Ukraine. I'll talk about this more in extra time, but clearly offensive stuff. Now, if we just pop him on screen, I decided the best way to refer to Radakin was Zelensky's chief of staff, because he's clearly not working for the British people. How can we prove this? Well, let's have a look at some of the headlines. Here's the UK Defence Journal, and it's talking about a snapshot of the status of the British fleet. If we bring in some meat on those bones, they say currently just over 19% of the Royal Navy's major surface combatants are active or immediately deployable. If ships in maintenance are included, that figure reaches around 43%. But of course, if ships are in maintenance, they are not immediately deployable. So we're talking about major breakdown. They go on to say this: the Navy is no longer just hollowed out, but holding on, and is now actually incapable of performing many of the routine tasks it managed until quite recently. And it says this breakdown is not the result of losses in combat or even the pressure of high-tempo operations, but as a result, there's a word missing there, long-term failure. And of course, the man responsible for that failure is Radakin himself, because he's been head of the very organisation, but he is apparently capable of now running the war in Ukraine. Ben, we've used this expression many times on UK Column, but sometimes you just can't make this up. It is so bad and so bizarre. Let's rub this in, because here's the Telegraph. Occasionally they do get off bad front pages, but here's the headline: it's time to be honest with ourselves. The Royal Navy is broken. And if you get into the meat of their article, it's going into detail about how the Royal Navy is broken down, including the first of the 6 Type 45 destroyers being alongside for 3,000 days, a ship that doesn't work. And of course, many of that class of ships, the Type 45, having had engine problems, so they can't get to sea. But the Telegraph also pointing out that the recent deployment of our aircraft carrier in supposedly a task force, which should be a very powerful group of ships, there was no nuclear submarine with them. This is unprecedented. And what we're looking at is a major breakdown. But if I pull in this one here, this is taken from the Royal Navy's own website, where it's almost impossible to see how many few ships we have, because it's full of jazzy hype and moving images. But here's the Type 45 being labelled as one of the most advanced warships ever built, presumably so advanced it could never go to sea. Where is the military going at the moment? Well, of course, the military is after the minds of our children. So let's have a look at cadet recruiting.
Here's a fact. There are more youngsters in the cadet forces than there are soldiers in the British Army. So in Britain, when you meet someone in uniform, chances are it'll be a cadet rather than a soldier. And that's only set to increase, with the government pledging a 30% rise in cadet participation, setting itself a more ambitious target than for recruitment in the armed forces.
So Defence HQ criticising Putin for going into the schools and recruiting in Russia, but here we are boasting that we've now got more cadets than members of the army itself, which is around 78,000. So what is this? A mild version of Hitler Youth, which is coming in order to provide the bodies for the future wars. Dangerous stuff. But let's look at a second video clip from Defence HQ, when effectively they're pulling on the heartstrings of the public in relation to Ukraine.
We just want to do everything that we can to help the people of Ukraine.
Hello, I'm Anne.
And I'm Jane.
And between us, together with all our efforts, we've raised £15,000 to help with support for Ukraine. The money we raised has all gone to Ukraine in the form of equipment, boots, warm clothing, sleeping bags, first aid kits, for Starlink subscriptions, whatever is needed.
I'm William Cook, and I'm the Director of Cook Defence Systems based here in County Durham. We're proud to have delivered new tracks to allow over 500 Ukrainian armoured fighting vehicles to be returned to the front line.
On Operation Interflex, we trained more than 58,000 Ukrainians in basic combat skills.
It's been a privilege to be able to help, and I pray to God that your country will be independent and free.
We really feel that our operation is having an impact, helping Ukraine to repel Russia.
It's showing that not only government support Ukraine, it's showing that civilian people who feeling this in their heart, that they want to support Ukraine.
Whether it's training soldiers or people like Anne and Jane raising money for Ukraine, we really feel the UK support.
It's definitely something we're proud of, but it's not just us. People up and down the country are all supporting Ukraine in their own way.
So I think just terrible that those ladies, and I'm sure their hearts are in the right place and they're working very hard for what they believe is the right cause. But of course, they're going to have no knowledge at all about the real causes of the war in Ukraine, and they're going to have no idea about the slaughter on the battlefields in Ukraine. But the government is going to use them in the most twisted way in order to try and get its war agenda through. I found that one particularly appalling, but let's just move on. Come back on this. Let's just move on very briefly to this one, which is Rheinmetall in Germany, the arms manufacturer. A couple of years ago got a very big contract to produce more shells because, of course, the West was running out of shells. So their production now online, and those shells are coming into Ukraine to help fuel the war. But of course, this is promoted as being something which is good for Germany and good for Europe. Here they are heading for an annual output of around 700,000 rounds. But in the meantime, we've got more going on because we've got Britain now teaming up with Japan. And I found this one very cynical as well. 1 minute, Healy is holding the arms of veterans. Of course, many of them, or the few that are left, went through horrors fighting the Japanese. So he's now cuddling up to the vets. But what's going on in the background is working with Japan to get over that embarrassing hump of the death in World War II in order that we can team up to what is being described as one of the closest defence partners we've got in the world. So more trouble. And of course, this is Asia in light of their supposed threats from China. But we've got a new military deal with Norway, 10 billion. This is an order from the Norwegians for frigates from UK. Why they want to buy from us, I have no idea. We've already shown the disaster with the Type 45, but more of the industrial complex. But when we talk about Israel, John Healy is very, very quiet. He said he's spoken to the Israeli defense minister and stressed the need for a diplomatic solution to end the war. I told Israel to stop the war, and giving them the arms to do so is the way I see this, which is utter hypocrisy. And I'm very pleased to say that actually on the website itself for Defence HQ, people were really pushing back about what's being posted. So here's somebody standing up for people in Gaza who are having to cope with the drones and explosive robots. And this one caught my eye because whilst the headline is Israel has the right to cut off food, water and electricity, and we see Keir Starmer bathed in blood, the actual text is talking about Israeli Defense Forces sniping. And I'll just bring people's attention to a discussion I had with Patrick Henningsen last week. This will go out tomorrow at 1:00. But it's us talking about an excellent, yes, I did say that word, an excellent documentary by Stephanie Hegarty from BBC World Service, who was examining why children are dying in Gaza as the result of gunshot wounds. Very young children clearly being killed by IDF snipers. So we'll be going into that in more detail. But